hammer swung toward Stephen's head. He didn't flinch. His hand shot up, caught the attacker's wrist mid-swing, twisted it. The hammer dropped. The man screamed. In 2 seconds, he was on the ground. 3 gang members stood frozen, staring at the quiet Carpenter they'd tried to intimidate. "Who the hell are you?" one of them shouted. Stephen looked at him calmly. "Someone who's been watching you for 2 weeks." The words hung in the air like a threat. What these thugs didn't know was this: the man standing in front of them wasn't just a carpenter. He was Steven Seagal, martial artist fighter. Legend. And he was working undercover for the FBI. But here's the twist. They had no idea, and by the time they figured it out, it would be too late. Would you stay calm if someone attacked you with a hammer? Terror dois earlier. Stephen knelt in the dirt of a Nevada construction site, sanding a wooden beam. His hands were rough, calloused, covered in years of hard work. But these weren't just a carpenter's hands. These were the hands of someone who'd trained his entire life to protect people. A black SUV pulled up, music blaring. 3 men stepped out, tattoos covering their arms, gold chains glinting in the sun. They walked with arrogance, the kind that came from never being challenged. "Hey, old man," one shouted. His voice was mocking, dismissive. Stephen didn't look up. He kept working. Focused. "You work for Martinez." "I work," Stephen said quietly. The tallest one stepped closer. His boots kicked dust onto the freshly sanded beam. Hours of careful work ruined in one disrespectful motion. "We need to talk to your boss." "He's not here." "Then you'll do." The man kicked more dirt, deliberately, aggressively, testing for a reaction. Stephen paused, but still didn't look up. Inside, his mind was cataloging everything: faces, voices, body language, threat levels. This was exactly what he'd come here for: to draw them out, to make them confident, to let them show their hand. "Martinez owes us money," the man continued. "He doesn't owe you anything." The shortest one laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. "You got a mouth on you, old man." Before Stephen could respond, the third man grabbed a hammer from the workbench. "Maybe we smash some things up," he said. He lifted it high, ready to destroy expensive materials. That's when Stephen moved fast, precise, effortless. One step closed the distance. One motion redirected the attack. The hammer fell. The man collapsed, holding his wrist in shock and pain. Stephen's voice remained calm. "Leave." The tall one's confidence cracked. He pulled out his phone, fingers shaking slightly. "You just made a huge mistake." They backed toward their SUV, trying to save face, trying to look tough even in retreat. The engine roared. Tires spun. They disappeared in a cloud of dust. Other workers had stopped to watch. Now they stared at Stephen. Who was this quiet carpenter? How did he move like that? Stephen knelt back down, picked up his sandpaper, continued working like nothing happened. But in his pocket, his phone was recording every word, every threat, every face. The FBI would have what they needed, but this was just the beginning. "Would you stay calm if someone attacked you with a hammer?" Stephen sat across from Agent Sarah Chen. Her office was small, functional, walls covered with case files and photographs, red strings connecting faces to locations. A web of criminal activity. "Martinez Construction is being extorted," she said. She slid a folder across the desk. Stephen opened it. Photographs of damaged equipment, slashed tires, broken windows, workers with black eyes and split lips, local gang. Stephen asked. "We thought so at first." Agent Chen pulled out another photo. A man in an expensive suit, gray hair, cold eyes, but it goes higher, much higher. She pointed to the man, Victor Kozlov. "He owns half the businesses in this county." Owns or controls? Both. Stephen studied the photograph. This wasn't just street-level thugs. This was organized crime, real power, real danger. Martinez refused to pay. Chen continued. So they escalated. Workers are being followed home. Families threatened. She pulled out another photo. A young girl, maybe 8 years old, Martinez's daughter, walking to school. A black SUV visible in the background. Stephen's jaw tightened. They're watching his family. Every day. The room fell silent. Stephen had seen this pattern before. Bullies always targeted the vulnerable. Always went after what people loved most. "We need someone inside," Chen said. "Someone who can blend in, gather evidence. Stay calm under pressure." She looked at Stephen directly. Someone these guys would never suspect. Stephen didn't hesitate. "I'll do it. It's dangerous." "We can't guarantee." "I don't need guarantees." Stephen closed the folder. His mind was already working. Preparing. "I'll go in as a carpenter. Learn the crew, earn their trust, and when the gang comes back." Stephen's eyes were steady, certain. I'll give them enough rope to hang themselves. Press and dire FPO's oddity. Stephen reported everything to Agent Chen that night, via encrypted phone, mid-20s. One has a spider tattoo on his neck, that's Rico. He works for Kozlov. They'll come back, Stephen said. We know. That's what we're counting on. How many? Intel says 8 to 10. Maybe more. Stephen nodded to himself. I'll be ready. Stephen, be careful. These aren't movie stuntmen. He smiled slightly. I know. That's why I'm here. He hung up, across the street, hidden in a van. FBI surveillance equipment hummed. Cameras, microphones, recording devices. Everything Stephen said and did was being documented. Building a case brick by brick. But for the case to work, Stephen needed them to come back. Needed them to make threats on camera. Needed them to show their true nature. Tomorrow would be that day. Would you go undercover knowing your family might be at risk? The next morning felt different. The air was tense. Workers moved quietly, glancing toward the entrance every few minutes, waiting for something they hoped wouldn't come. Martinez pulled Stephen aside. His face was pale. Worried. They called me last night, he whispered. What did they say? That today would be my last chance. Martinez's hands shook as he held his coffee cup. They mentioned Sophia. Stephen's expression didn't change. But inside, anger flared. Sophia was Martinez's 8-year-old daughter. Threatening children crossed every line. Where is she now? My wife took her to her mother's. 3 hours away. Good. Stephen put a hand on Martinez's shoulder. Stay in the office trailer today. Lock the door. What are you going to do? My job. Martinez wanted to ask more, but something in Stephen's eyes stopped him. This wasn't just a carpenter. This was something else entirely. 9:47 a.m. The rumble of engines announced their arrival. 3 SUVs, 2 motorcycles. They came fast, aggressive, like an invading army. Workers immediately scattered, tools dropped, truck doors slammed. Within 60 seconds, the site was nearly empty. But Stephen stayed. He stood in the center of the lot, tool belt around his waist, hammer hanging from the loop, completely calm. 8 men stepped out of the vehicle's bats. Crowbars, chains. They spread out in a semi-circle, blocking exits, professional intimidation tactics. The leader emerged last, Ricky. The scar across his face looked worse in daylight, thick, raised. Angry, his eyes locked onto Stephen. You're the one who touched my guys. Stephen didn't respond, just watched, calculating distances, counting opponents, planning moves. I respect guts. Ricky continued. He pulled out a knife. 6 inches of polished steel. But guts don't stop steel. The other men moved closer, tightening the circle. This was the moment they'd come for, the moment when resistance broke, when fear won. Stephen's voice was quiet, steady. You sure you want to do this? Ricky smiled, already decided. He lunged, fast, practiced. Deadly, the knife came straight for Stephen's chest. Stephen moved, his body shifted like water. One hand intercepted Ricky's wrist, guided it past his body. The other hand struck a pressure point. The knife clattered to the ground. In 3 seconds, Ricky was face down, arm twisted behind his back. Stephen's knee pressed lightly against his spine. Perfect control. No excessive force, just enough to immobilize completely. The 7 others froze. Weapons raised, but no one moved. They'd expected an easy target, an old man who'd beg for mercy. This was something completely different. Stephen looked up at them, his expression unchanged. Anyone else? Silence. Then, from behind the group, a new voice. Enough. The men parted. A man in an expensive suit stepped forward. Gray hair, cold eyes. Viktor Kozlov, the real power behind everything. Stephen recognized him immediately from the FBI photos. This was the target. The man they'd been building a case against for months. And he'd just walked directly into the trap. Interesting, Kozlov said. His voice was smooth, controlled. You're not what you appear to be. Stephen released Ricky, stood slowly. Neither are you. Kozlov smiled. But his eyes were calculating, trying to figure out who Stephen really was. You've caused me problems. You've caused a lot of people problems. True. But I have the power to make those problems disappear. Kozlov adjusted his cufflinks casually. Work for me. I pay better than Martinez. Not interested. Then you're stupid. Stephen said nothing. Kozlov's smile faded. Last chance. Walk away, or we burn everything Martinez has built, including his family. Kozlov's eyes narrowed. That was a confirmation, a threat made clear, exactly what the FBI needed. Stephen pulled out his phone, pressed a single button. Kozlov's expression changed. What are you doing? In the distance, sirens began to wail. Did you expect Kozlov to show up personally? That night, Steven sat with Martinez in the office trailer. The small space was cramped, cluttered with blueprints, invoices, and half-empty coffee cups. A single lamp illuminated the desk between them. Martinez looked exhausted. Deep lines creased his forehead. His eyes were red from lack of sleep, from weeks of worry that never ended. "They're going to come back," Martinez said. His voice was quiet but certain. He'd seen this pattern before. Push, retreat, return with more force, and they won't come alone. Steven nodded slowly. He'd expected this. In fact, he'd counted on it. "I know." Martinez leaned back in his chair. It creaked under his weight. He rubbed his face with both hands, trying to massage away the stress that had become permanent. "Then why are you still here?" It was a genuine question, not accusatory, just confused. Most workers had already started looking for other jobs. The ones who stayed did so out of loyalty or desperation. But this Carpenter, this quiet man who'd only been here 2 weeks, he had no reason to stay. No reason to risk what was coming. Steven looked at him. Direct eye contact. The kind that communicated more than words ever could. Because someone has to be. Martinez shook his head. A bitter smile crossed his lips. "You're just a carpenter." He said it without malice, just stating what he believed to be fact. "You don't owe me this. You don't owe me a paycheck either. But you give me one. That's different." "Is it?" Martinez didn't have an answer for that. Steven didn't correct him. Didn't reveal who he really was. Didn't mention the FBI or the investigation. Not yet. The timing had to be perfect. One wrong word could compromise everything. Could put Martinez and his family at greater risk. Could let the real criminals slip away. So Steven stayed quiet. Let Martinez believe what he needed to believe. That he was just a carpenter with more courage than sense. The next morning, 8 men showed up. The rumble of engines announced their arrival before they were visible. 3 SUVs. 2 motorcycles. They pulled into the construction site like an invading force. Workers froze. Tools dropped from hands. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Fear spread like electricity through the crew. Some men immediately started walking toward their vehicles. Others ducked behind equipment. A few younger workers pulled out their phones, calling wives, girlfriends, family members, just in case. Bats rested on shoulders. Crowbars hung from hands. One man carried a length of chain wrapped around his fist. They spread out across the site, deliberate, organized. This wasn't random chaos. This was planned intimidation. Workers scattered, running toward the parking area, grabbing keys, starting engines. The sound of vehicles leaving filled the air. Dust clouds rose from spinning tires. Within 90 seconds, the site was nearly empty. But Steven stayed. He stood in the center of the site, tool belt still around his waist, hammer hanging from the loop, level clipped to his side. He didn't run, didn't hide, didn't even look particularly concerned, just stood there, waiting. The leader stepped forward. A man they called Ricky. Everyone on this site had heard the name, whispered it like a curse. A scar cut across his left cheek, thick, raised, ugly. The kind of scar that came from a knife fight. The kind that told you he'd survived worse than this. His eyes were cold, flat, empty of empathy. The eyes of someone who'd hurt people before, and would do it again without hesitation. "You're the one who put hands on my guys." It wasn't a question. He already knew. Word traveled fast in their world. Steven didn't deny it, didn't apologize. They put hands on property that wasn't theirs. Ricky smiled, but there was no warmth in it, no humor. Just the baring of teeth. "You got guts. I respect that." He reached into his jacket, slow, deliberate, making sure Steven saw. He pulled out a knife. The blade caught the morning sun. 6 inches of polished steel, sharp, well-maintained, a tool made for one purpose. But guts don't stop steel. The other men moved closer, forming a loose circle, blocking escape routes. This was the moment they'd come for. The moment when fear turned to compliance, when resistance broke, when people learned their place. Steven didn't flinch. His stance remained relaxed, his breathing steady, his eyes locked on Ricky's. "You really want to do this?" Ricky's smile widened. "I don't want to." He shifted his weight, preparing to move. "I'm going to." Do you think Steven was ready for what came next? Viktor Kozlov sat in an interrogation room, hands cuffed to the table, his expensive suit wrinkled now, confidence completely gone. Agent Chen sat across from him. A laptop opened between them. "Tell me about the others," she said. Kozlov stared at the wall, silent. Stubborn, Chen clicked a button. A video played, security footage from Martinez construction. But not from this week. From 6 months ago. Different location. Different business. A restaurant owner being threatened by Ricky. The same pattern. The same threats. We've been investigating you for 18 months. Chen said. She clicked again. Another video. A grocery store. A mechanic shop. A laundromat. All showing the same thing. Kozlov's network systematically destroying small businesses. 23 businesses, all extorted. Some for years. She leaned forward, some owners paid. Some didn't. A burned building. Roberto Garcia. He refused to pay. His restaurant burned down. Another image, a man in a hospital bed, Shen Wu. He went to the police. His son was beaten so badly he still can't walk. Kozlov's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. And then there's Martinez. Chen continued. The one who wouldn't break, wouldn't pay, wouldn't run. She closed the laptop. That's what made him perfect for us. For the first time, Kozlov looked at her. Perfect. Martinez contacted us 3 months ago. Told us everything. Chen smiled. To draw you out. That's impossible. He wore a wire for 12 weeks. Documented every threat. Every demand. Kozlov's face went pale. But his fear, his daughter, Al real. That's what made it convincing. Chen stood. Martinez is braver than you ever understood. She walked to the door. Enjoy your cell. 23 counts of extortion. 2 counts of arson. Multiple assault charges. She paused at the doorway. You're never seeing daylight again. Stephen hadn't left yet. He sat with Martinez in the office trailer one last time. The afternoon sun streamed through the window. You knew, Martinez said. It wasn't a question, that you were working with the FBI.
Yes.
How long? About 3 days in. Stephen smiled. You're a terrible liar, but a brave one. Martinez laughed. A genuine sound. The first real laugh in months. I was terrified every single day. That's what made it work. Real fear can't be faked. When they mentioned Sophia, his voice broke. That was the hardest part. Stephen's expression softened. You protected her by standing up. The FBI said the same thing. Martinez pulled out a photo. Sophia. Smiling. She gets to grow up without that shadow now? Because of you? Because of both of us. Martinez put the photo away carefully. The other business owners, Chen told me about them. 23 families. Stephen said. Al free now, because Kozlov's network is collapsing. Martinez nodded slowly, processing the magnitude. I almost gave up. So many times. But you didn't. There were nights I had the money ready. $5,000 in an envelope. He looked at Stephen. I'd sit there staring at it, thinking how easy it would be. Why didn't you pay? Martinez was quiet for a moment. Because my father built this company with his hands. His voice grew stronger. He taught me that honest work matters. That giving in to bullies makes the world darker. He stood, walked to the window, looked out at his crew working. If I paid, what would I teach Sophia? That the right thing is whatever keeps you safe. Stephen stood beside him. You taught her something better. That courage matters. That standing up is worth the risk. Was it, though? Really, Stephen gestured to the site. Workers laughing. Building. Free from fear. 23 families would say yes. A younger worker approached the trailer, knocked hesitantly. Boss, we found something. Martinez and Stephen followed him to the foundation, there carved into the fresh concrete, for Sophia. And for everyone who refuses to be afraid. Martinez stared at it. He'd done it this morning. Before the FBI arrived, before the arrests, when he still didn't know if he'd survive the day. A permanent mark, a testament. Stephen put a hand on his shoulder. That's going to be here long after both of us are gone. Martinez nodded. Unable to speak, they stood there in silence. 2 men who'd chosen to fight instead of flee, and in doing so, changed everything. Would you have had the courage to work with the FBI knowing your family was at risk? The community center frame was complete. Walls were going up. The project that had been stalled for months was now ahead of schedule. Workers moved with energy, with purpose. The fear that had hung over them was gone. Stephen had stayed the extra week. Not because the FBI needed him, but because the work needed finishing. He'd promised to help complete the frame, and Steven Seagal always kept his promises. He worked alongside the crew, teaching, learning, building. The younger guys asked him questions about martial arts, about staying calm under pressure, about how he moved so fast that day. Stephen answered patiently, training helps, but mindset matters more. What mindset? A young worker named Carlos asked. That you're there to protect, not to dominate. Carlos thought about this. Isn't that the same thing? No, domination is about ego. Protection is about others. Another worker, Tommy, spoke up, but you took down Ricky like it was nothing. Because I'd practiced that movement 10,000 times. Stephen picked up a board, measured it carefully. Repetition builds instinct. When the moment comes, you don't think. You act. He cut the board with precision, perfect angle. Clean edge, same as this. I've made this cut 1,000 times. The crew watched him work, seeing the connection between the discipline of carpentry and the discipline of martial arts. Both required patience, precision, respect for the craft. Martinez approached at lunch. He carried 2 paper bags. My wife made extra, he said. They sat in the shade of the unfinished building, eating homemade tacos, the best Stephen had tasted in months. She wants to meet you, Martinez said, to thank you properly. That's not necessary. It is for her. For us. Martinez took a bite, chewed thoughtfully. We're having a dedication ceremony. When the center opens, that's months away. 4 months. Maybe 5. Martinez looked at him directly. Will you come? Stephen hesitated. He didn't like attention, didn't need recognition. I don't do ceremonies. It's not about you. It's about what you represent. Which is that good people still exist. That someone will stand up when it matters. Martinez pulled out a piece of paper, a design sketch. We're putting a plaque inside, honoring everyone who stood up. The sketch showed a bronze plaque with names, Roberto Garcia, Chen Wu, others. And at the bottom, and to those who stand with us, unnamed but never forgotten. That's for you. Martinez said, you don't have to come. But know that you'll be remembered. Stephen studied the design, felt the weight of it. These names weren't just victims. They were fighters. People who'd refused to surrender. I'll think about it, he said quietly. On the last day, the crew gathered, not for a formal goodbye, but for lunch. One final meal together. Someone brought a guitar. Music filled the air. Stories were shared. Laughter echoed across the site. Stephen sat with them, part of the circle. No longer just the mysterious Carpenter, but a member of the crew. A friend. Carlos raised a beer. To Stephen, who taught us that being quiet doesn't mean being weak. The crew echoed the sentiment. Glasses clinked. Stephen raised his water bottle. To all of you, who showed up even when it was dangerous. That's real courage. They drank. As the sun set, Stephen packed his tools. The same worn tool belt, the same dusty truck. Martinez walked him to the parking lot. You changed everything here? You did that yourself? I just helped. Will I see you again? Stephen opened his truck door, paused. If you need me, I'll be there. How will I reach you? Stephen smiled. You won't have to. I'll know. He climbed in, started the engine. As he pulled away, the crew lined up, waving, calling thanks. Stephen waved back once, then drove into the fading light. Behind him, the community center stood, a skeleton of wood and promise. Soon it would be complete, a place for families, for children, for hope, and carved in its foundation, hidden from view but permanent nonetheless, built by those who refused to be afraid. Stephen's phone buzzed, a text from Agent Chen, Arizona job, family bakery, 3 sisters being threatened. Interested. He smiled, typed back one word, address. The truck merged onto the highway, toward another town, another fight, another group of people who needed someone to stand with them. Because that's what heroes do. Not for applause, but because it's right. Would you want someone like Stephen protecting your community? The community center opened. Martinez stood at the entrance, his wife beside him. Sophia holding his hand. Hundreds of people gathered. Families who'd waited years for this moment, a safe place for their children, programs, classes, hope. The plaque Martinez had designed was mounted inside bronze. Beautiful, permanent. 23 names of business owners who'd stood up to Kozlov, and at the bottom, the line about unnamed heroes. Sophia read it aloud, her small voice clear and strong. And to those who stand with us, unnamed but never forgotten. She looked up at her father. Who's that about Papa? Martinez knelt beside her. Someone very brave. Someone who helped us when we needed it most. Where is he now? Martinez looked toward the horizon, helping someone else. Tm Doi Somir Iri Zona. Stephen knelt in the dirt, sanding a wooden shelf. Behind him, a small bakery was being rebuilt. 3 sisters watched him work. Last week, their shop had been vandalized, windows smashed, equipment destroyed, a gang demanding protection money. The sisters refused to pay. They called the police. The police called the FBI. The FBI called Stephen. Now he was here, working as a carpenter, building new shelves while gathering evidence. The pattern was familiar. threats, intimidation, fear, but also courage, people refusing to give in. The oldest sister. You didn't have to help rebuild. Stephen took the water gratefully. I know. Then why? He looked at the bakery, at the pride these women took in their work. Because what you're doing matters? It's just bread. No, it's courage. Stephen gestured to the construction. Anyone can give in. It's easier, safer. But you didn't. And that means something. Maria's eyes grew wet. We're terrified. I know. But we can't let them win. Stephen stood, dusted off his hands. They won. T. Cora Messegi. Stephen Seagal didn't become a legend because he was famous. He became a legend because he stood up, not just in movies, but in real life, for real people. This story isn't about martial arts. It's about courage, about refusing to let bullies win, about standing with people who have no one else. Kozlov had money, power, fear on his side, but he lost because one person decided to stand firm, and that inspired others to do the same. Martinez could have paid, could have protected his family the easy way, but he chose the hard path, the right path, and in doing so freed 23 other families. That's what real courage looks like. Not dramatic speeches, not Hollywood moments, just quiet determination, showing up, doing the work, refusing to surrender. THQSDOBUE must ask when someone in your community is being bullied, when a small business is being destroyed, when fear is winning. What do you do? Do you look away? Do you say not my problem? Or do you stand? Not everyone can fight like Stephen Seagal, but everyone can refuse to be silent. Everyone can support those under attack. Everyone can be the person who says, no more. Because bullies thrive in silence. They win when good people do nothing. Stephen Seagal understood this. That's why he kept showing up, kept standing with people who needed him. Not for fame, not for money, but because it was right, and because someone had to. Final TOGHT. Somewhere right now someone is being threatened. A family is living in fear. A business owner is deciding whether to give in. They need someone to stand with them. Maybe that someone is you. Not with violence, not with aggression, but with presence, with support, with courage. Be the person who refuses to look away. Be the person who stands firm when others run. Be the Stephen Seagal in someone's story. Because that's how we change the world. One stand at a time, one person at a time, one moment of courage at a time. Do you think more people should stand up like Stephen and Martinez did? Have you ever witnessed someone being bullied and wished you'd done something? What part of this story impacted you the most? Drop a comment and tell us. Which moment gave you chills? Whether you'd have the courage to go undercover. If you know someone who stood up against bullies, like this video if you believe. Courage matters more than comfort. One person can make a difference. If real heroes don't seek recognition, share this story with someone who needs courage today, anyone who's ever felt powerless. People who believe in standing up for what's right,